It started with a note, a folded piece of paper tucked into my front door wreath. The handwriting was sharp, slanted, and unmistakably annoyed. This is a respectful neighborhood. Your decorations are not in keeping with our community standards. Please remove them immediately. Judith Harper, HOA Vice President. I stared at the note, then at my house. Modest string lights along the roofline, a small projected snowfall in the garage, and a handmade wooden reindeer on the lawn. No flashing strobes, no inflatable Santas, just quiet cheer. If you've ever had a neighbor try to turn your life into a courtroom drama over string lights, welcome. You're not alone. Drop a comment below if your Karen ever tried to fine you for joy. And don't forget to like and subscribe, especially if you're a fan of revenge stories that start with passive-aggressive paper and end with 80,000 synchronized LED pixels. This is the story of how a woman tried to ruin my Christmas and got lit up instead. The day I moved into Willow Pines was the first cool morning after a sweltering October. I'd just driven cross-country from Oregon, trailer in tow, dog panting in the front seat, and dreams of peace bubbling somewhere behind my exhaustion. My job, a lighting engineer for concert tours, meant I'd spent the last decade on the road. Now, for the first time, I had a permanent address. No hotels, no tour buses, just me, my tools, and a mortgage. The neighborhood looked like a suburban catalog, trimmed hedges, mailbox flags, all at the same polite angle, and streets named after trees that never actually grew here. Everyone waved, smiled, nodded. And yet, I felt it right away. That tightness beneath the surface. Like people smiled not because they were happy, but because they were being watched. My house was at the end of a cul-de-sac, tucked between the Garcias, two kids Lovely, and Mr. Bender, retired Air Force, constantly mowing. It had a decent yard, a solid fence, and a wide, clean front face, perfect for projecting winter animations. I didn't plan anything extreme, just a few classic white LEDs around the eaves, a tree wrapped in warm white spirals, and a tasteful snowflake pattern on the garage door. Artful, quiet, personal. I grew up without decorations. My mom couldn't afford them. The first time I ever saw a house lit up, I stood in front of it for 20 minutes, pretending I was just taking a break on my walk home from school. I told myself that someday I'd have a house with lights. That was my version of the American dream. 2 days after setup, the note arrived. I hadn't even finished tightening all the zip ties. I asked around, HOA. Yeah, everyone had stories. A flag too big, a flower pot too colorful, a teen's car parked slightly crooked. Violation. But no one had stories about Judith Harper quite like Mrs. Garcia. She once reported my daughter's sidewalk chalk as graffiti, she whispered. Said it lowered property values. Judith Harper, mid-60s, perfectly symmetrical haircut, tennis clothes, but I'd never seen her near a court. Drove a white Lexus, lived 2 streets over in a house with all-year white shutters, and a fountain that hadn't worked since Obama's second term. HOA Vice President, but from how people said her name, I suspected the real president had long since given up. She didn't knock on my door, never called, just notes. After the first one came the reminder email from the HOA's general account, an address I hadn't even registered with yet. It referenced unapproved exterior ornamentation. I replied politely, asking which specific rules were being violated. I got no answer. Instead, the warnings escalated. Another note, then a formal envelope. Then, one morning, my reindeer sculpture lay face down, its legs snapped. It had taken me 10 hours to build that thing out of reclaimed cedar. The screws had been removed, not broken, unscrewed. I walked to Mr. Bender's place, asked if he'd seen anything. He gave me a tight nod. Don't want to get involved, he said, but your camera caught it. You might want to check. I blinked. Camera? He gestured toward his porch. I hadn't noticed it before. A tiny dome camera tucked under the overhang. HOA says we're not allowed visible cams on the front, but I've had this since the dog walkers started letting their mutts use my lawn. That night he handed me a flash drive. Didn't see anything myself, he said, but you might. I watched the footage on my laptop, heart crawling up my throat. At 2:17 a.m., a tall figure in a hooded coat walked calmly across my lawn, carrying what looked like a screwdriver. 3 minutes later, my reindeer was in pieces. I paused the video. There, as the figure turned to leave, the porch light from across the street caught her face. Judith Harper. She hadn't bothered to cover it. I filed a police report. Vandalism, trespassing. The officer at the desk gave a non-committal shrug. You sure you want to escalate? These things tend to go in circles in HOA towns. I showed him the video. He raised an eyebrow. All right, we'll make a report. 2 days later, I got an email. Insufficient evidence for prosecution. And that's when I realized this wasn't just about lights. This was about control. Judith didn't care what kind of lights I used. She cared that I hadn't asked permission, that I hadn't submitted my little display for approval to her committee of perfectly manicured tyrants. So I did what any good lighting engineer would do. I opened my laptop, created a new folder, named it Operation Jingle Hell. The next morning, I started taking measurements, not of the house, of the street in front of Judith Harper's. Her lawn was aggressively plain, the kind of emptiness that felt intentional. Perfect hedges, perfect porch, perfectly unwelcoming. She didn't just want to keep things in order. She wanted them devoid of personality. I didn't want revenge, I wanted symmetry. But first, I needed the rules. I printed the entire Willow Pines HOA guideline packet, 47 pages of petty regulations dressed up in legalese. I read every line, highlighter in hand. Turns out, it's amazing what you're allowed to do if you use the right phrasing. Outdoor decorative illumination, for example, was permitted within reasonable seasonal expectations, with no further clarification. The clause about community harmony was subjective, while references to disruptive lighting specifically excluded installations that were directionally contained and limited to one's own property. You know what is directionally contained? A laser grid mapped to holiday music, running on a controlled schedule between 6 and 9 p.m. with a certified decibel cap of 45 dB. I pulled out my schematics. At work, I'd built lighting rigs for amphitheaters, theme parks, even a presidential fundraiser. I knew how to map light to rhythm, knew how to source custom LEDs from Taiwan that didn't fry in the rain, and I knew how to wire a controller box so tight it would survive a hurricane. What I hadn't done was build all that for a suburban roofline. Yet, over the next 10 days, I did what Judith would have called an eyesore. I called it preparation. My garage became a lab. Raspberry Pis, DMX controllers, waterproof strips. I ran cables beneath mulch, buried conduits in the flower bed, tested RGB fades until 3 a.m. My dog, a mutt named Sparky, with a loud opinion on everything, patrolled the front porch like a furry alarm system. Neighbors started noticing. Some stopped to ask. Most didn't, except the Garcias. One night after I ran a test pattern, their daughter stood in my yard clapping. "It looks like Elsa's castle," she yelled. The next morning, a second HOA letter arrived. Ongoing violations unresolved. HOA reserves the right to issue fines up to $250 per day for noncompliance. I replied with a scan of the guidelines, each supposed violation highlighted and annotated with the relevant legal allowance. No answer. So I kept building. On the second Friday of December, I launched the first full test. 6 p.m. sharp, Carol of the Bells blasted softly from 2 directional speakers mounted inside ornamental candy canes. My lights moved like water, ripples along the eaves, a snowstorm across the garage, a synchronized strobe cascade down the walkway. It wasn't loud, wasn't garish. It was precise. Judith Harper's lights? 2 yellow bulbs on either side of her door, one flickering. I watched from my porch as her Lexus turned into her driveway. She paused at the curb, stared. Then she marched across the street. I met her halfway. "Mr. Kelly," she said, "we need to talk." "Evening," I replied. She held a clipboard. "You're in direct violation of Section 8.4 of the HOA seasonal decor policy." I smiled. "I'd love for you to show me where that is." She flipped pages, stopped. Her mouth twitched. "There's a lot of concern about the traffic this is going to cause," she said, voice tight. I nodded. "That's why I filed the event notice with the city. You'll find the permit on file under event code WPDEC 447. She blinked. I also notified local police. They'll patrol the area nightly just in case. We're expecting about 40 cars on peak nights. I've already marked cones for overflow parking. Away from driveways, of course. Her jaw clenched. And I added a donation box, I said, nodding toward the little lit-up gift box beside the sidewalk. All proceeds go to the local animal shelter. Figured that would reflect positively on the neighborhood. She looked past me, at the growing crowd of kids watching from across the street, at the parents with coffee mugs, at the ring of gentle music and shimmering light. Then she did something incredible. She smiled. That's when I knew I'd won the first round, because that smile was pure panic. The next morning, someone kicked over the donation box, then tore out 3 light strands from the walkway. I checked the footage. Same figure, same coat, same height, same Judith. I emailed the footage to the HOA with the subject line, "Ongoing vandalism, please advise." No reply, but the damage was done. By Monday, I'd received 5 letters from concerned neighbors, all unsigned, all strangely similar in phrasing. Complaints about light pollution, about instigating disruption, about making this neighborhood into a spectacle. I posted them on Nextdoor with a simple caption. Apparently joy is a disruption now. The post got 184 likes, and one comment from a name I didn't recognize. That woman's been pulling this stunt since the 90s. Times someone outshined her. On the third night of the full show, a news van pulled up. The local station ran a segment titled Engineer Spreads Cheer with Precision Holiday Display. They interviewed kids, showed the donation box, and even mentioned my efforts to maintain compliance with HOA codes. I watched the segment while eating leftover pizza in the garage. Sparky curled up on a sleeping bag beneath the controller panel. The next morning, I got a handwritten note. But this one didn't come from Judith. It came from Mr. Bender. Don't know what you did to upset her, but it's about time someone stood up to Harper. Let me know if you need help rewiring anything. Underneath was a folded $20 bill. Judith wasn't done, of course. She never is. At the next HOA board meeting, she introduced a motion. Limitations on decorative light installations exceeding 100 linear feet or involving musical accompaniment. Claimed it was to preserve neighborhood peace. But something had changed. Neighbors pushed back. Amanda Groves, from 3 houses down, raised her hand. So we're punishing people for being festive? I just think we need to preserve standards, Judith replied. And who decides those? Amanda asked, dead calm. The motion failed. 3 votes to 2. Judith's smile returned, but it looked like a mask that didn't fit. Later that week, I found another note on my door. This one was typed. We'll see how festive you feel when the fines start. No name, but I recognized the font. That's when I decided to turn up the brightness. The following weekend, I added 4 more light towers. They weren't cheap. Repurposed trusses from an old theater setup, powder-coated black, with custom waterproof LED matrices. I wired each to run its own subsequence, timed to the millisecond. Each one stood 8 feet tall, positioned at the corners of my yard like luminous sentinels. That Saturday evening, I premiered the new sequence. The lights pulsed to Hallelujah by Pentatonics. Slow fade-ins, color washes, a final crescendo where every pixel on the property bloomed in white. Then a silent pause, deliberate, 1 breath long, before the last chord landed, crisp and clean. No applause, just silence, and then sniffles. Because this wasn't just a show anymore. It had become something else. A gathering point, an offering, a reminder that the season could still mean something in a place that tried to legislate the soul out of its streets. From the edge of the lawn, Mrs. Garcia wiped her eyes. Her husband held her hand. Mr. Bender nodded once, slowly. Behind them, half the block stood watching. Lawn chairs, thermoses, blankets. No one said a word when the lights dimmed. They just stood for a few seconds more, then dispersed quietly into the winter air. That night I slept better than I had in weeks. The next morning I woke up to a fine, $500. Unpermitted event causing disturbance to community function. Signed, J. Harper. I laughed, because now it was too late. The video had gone viral. Someone, not me, had filmed the Hallelujah sequence and posted it on TikTok with the caption, Dude fights back against HOA Karen with the most beautiful light show ever. By dawn, it had 2 million views. By lunch, 6. Hove's Hallelujah was trending. I started getting messages. Strangers from across the country offering to donate to the animal shelter. A church from Alabama asked if they could use my layout for their Christmas service. A lighting company from Ohio offered to send me free fixtures just to piss off every HOA in America. But the best message came from Officer Tara Monroe, Macon PD. City's gotten a few complaints about your lights. I reviewed the footage. It's beautiful. Also, you've broken no ordinances. Keep it up. I forwarded that to the HOA inbox. No reply. So I printed it, framed it, hung it on my front door. Judith escalated. Monday morning, a city inspector showed up. Clipboard, tape measure, strained expression. Got a report about unapproved electrical modifications, he said. Got a permit right here, I replied, handing him the documents. And receipts for every transformer, all UL certified. Power draws under 15 amps total. He blinked, flipped through the pages. You're the one with the light show? Guilty. He nodded slowly. My wife cried watching that video. Then he handed back the folder, smiled, and said, Good job. That night, Judith called the police. I heard the knock during the opening bars of Let It Snow. 2 officers on the porch, young, professional, a little sheepish. Hi, Mr. Kelly, one said. We got a noise complaint. I stepped outside. The air was cold, clear. The lights shifted in smooth waves behind me. Volume's at 42 decibels, I said. Ordinance kicks in at 55. Want to measure it? The second officer shook his head. You're fine. We had to respond, but honestly, this is incredible. His partner pointed to a spot near the garage. My daughter would lose her mind for a picture there. Mind if I bring her tomorrow? Bring the whole family. They left. Judith stood across the street, arms folded. I waved. She didn't wave back. The next HOA board meeting drew a crowd. Over 60 people crammed into the community center. I arrived early, wore my cleanest hoodie. Judith sat at the front, flanked by 2 stone-faced allies and a legal pad stacked with notes. She opened with a speech, long, winding, drenched in coded language about appropriate displays, community values, and restoring tranquility. Then she said it. We move to impose a $2,500 fine on Mr. Kelly for disruption, unauthorized event hosting, and violating the aesthetic integrity of Willow Pines. The room murmured. Seconded, one board member said, quiet but firm. Then Amanda Groves stood. I object. Judith frowned. You're not on the board, Ms. Groves. Amanda smiled. I've submitted my application, and I've collected signatures from 42 residents requesting an emergency election due to leadership misconduct. Judith's face didn't move, but the color drained from it. Amanda continued. Mr. Kelly hasn't broken any laws. He hasn't disrupted anything. He's united people. That's more than this board's done in 5 years. Someone in the back clapped. Then 2 more. Then everyone. Judith tried to shout over them. This is not orderly conduct. I demand... A voice interrupted from the door. Ma'am, I think it's time you sat down. Officer Monroe stepped inside. Uniform crisp, badge gleaming. I'm here to witness the meeting, per city request. Judith sputtered. You... Amanda took the floor. We propose an emergency vote for board reorganization, effective immediately. The motion passed, unanimously. Judith didn't even vote. She left the meeting through the back. The Lexus peeled out of the parking lot. We never saw it again. 2 nights later, I launched the final sequence. Custom-coded, new track, Light of the World, a full RGB orchestration across 9,000 channels. As it played, Amanda stood beside me watching. You really built all this to spite her? She asked. I smiled. No, I built it for my mom. Amanda blinked. Your mom? She never had decorations growing up, never had money. She passed last year. Told me once her dream was to have a house with lights. I paused. She never got to, but I did. Amanda put a hand on my shoulder. Then she would have loved this. That night, a kid left a note in my mailbox. Crayon on folded paper. Dear Mr. Josh, your house makes my mom smile. She doesn't smile a lot. Thank you. I framed it, right next to the police email. And every December since, the lights come back up. Bigger, brighter, smarter. Not to fight back, but because joy, real, undeniable joy, always finds a way through the noise. By the time Christmas Eve rolled around, the street outside my house looked like something out of a Hallmark movie. If Hallmark had better lighting tech and a slightly vengeful undercurrent. Cars lined the curb. Kids in pajamas sipped cocoa in the beds of parked trucks. Drones hovered overhead, filming the display from above. The local fire department even showed up. Not for a call, but because someone had invited them for the view. They parked the engine at the corner, lights off, sipping coffee from styrofoam cups. In the middle of it all, I stood with a controller in hand, Sparky at my feet in a tiny blinking LED collar, watching it all play out. That night sequence was the longest yet, 18 minutes of perfectly synchronized music and light. Oh Holy Night, Silent Night, Wizards in Winter, and my personal favorite, a dubstep remix of Deck the Halls that I'd mixed myself. The transitions were seamless, the colors rich and clean. The final number faded out into total silence before one last slow fade into a soft blue glow across the entire lawn, like snowfall from the heavens. I wasn't expecting applause, but that's exactly what happened. Not raucous, not performative, just real, spontaneous clapping from a crowd of 100 strangers gathered under the cold Georgia sky. Afterward, people lingered. They took selfies, dropped bills into the donation box, handed out cookies. Mrs. Garcia brought her famous cinnamon bark brittle. Even Mr. Bender cracked a grin when a group of teens complimented the sick light towers and asked if he helped. He had. He just didn't want anyone to know. Amanda came over, her scarf pulled tight around her neck. So, how does it feel to be the most beloved man in Willow Pines? I chuckled. Not sure beloved is the word, but I'll take tolerated. She nodded toward the mailbox. You might want to check that before midnight. I walked over. The flag was up. Inside, along with 2 Christmas cards and a flyer for gutter cleaning, was a slim envelope with no return address. I opened it carefully. Inside, 1 sheet of printer paper. Typed, no salutation, no sign-off. I've moved. You won. Enjoy your little fan club. But the neighborhood won't stay this way forever. Watch your back. I read it twice. Then again. Then I folded it neatly and slid it into my pocket, right next to the crayon note from the kid. Some victories don't need parades. They just need peace. The new HOA board, now headed by Amanda, met for the first time the following January. I didn't attend the meeting. I wasn't interested in power. I'd had my say in pixels and solder. But Amanda emailed me the minutes. They were short. Key highlights. The $2,500 fine attempt was formally reversed and expunged from all records. New guidelines were approved for seasonal decorations. Up to 120 linear feet of lighting, synchronized music permitted if volume remains below city ordinance limits, and community-supported displays allowed with a simple notification form. A vote was passed to rename the HOA newsletter. Its new title, The Bright Side. No mention of Judith, just quiet corrections, order restored. In the weeks that followed, life settled. The lights came down, the lawn healed. My dog stopped barking at every car. But something else changed too. Neighbors started waving more. Kids came by after school to ask questions about how that snowflake effect works, or what's that thing in the garage with all the buttons? I showed them. Let them press a few. Watch their faces light up brighter than anything I'd rigged. The Garcia girl brought me a drawing she made of my house. Every bulb colored by hand. Mr. Bender gave me his old soldering iron set. Retired, he said, but figured you'd do it justice. Amanda asked me to help design lights for the next HOA summer event. And Sparky? He just got fat on leftover holiday cookies. One cold morning in February, as I was reinstalling a motion sensor light on the garage, a minivan pulled into the driveway. The driver's window rolled down. A woman I didn't recognize leaned out. Are you the guy from the light show? I paused. Depends who's asking. She laughed. I'm Kelly Grant. We just moved in, 3 blocks over. My son wouldn't stop talking about it. Said we had to move to the neighborhood with the house that sings. I blinked. Well, I said, welcome to Willow Pines. She smiled. I hear you're the reason we don't have a holiday ban anymore. I shrugged. Just did what felt right. She leaned out a little more. You think you'll do it again next year? I looked down at the new wiring I was testing, then up at the empty yard, soon to bloom again. Yeah, I said. I think I will. But the best moment came in April. I was walking Sparky around the block when I noticed a familiar white Lexus parked in front of a rental sign 2 neighborhoods away. Judith Harper was loading boxes into the trunk. No fountain, no clipboard, no HOA title, just an ordinary resident now, living in a cul-de-sac with peeling shutters and no one left to boss around. She looked up, saw me, paused. I nodded. She turned away. And that was that. Some people say the best revenge is living well. I disagree. The best revenge is lighting up someone's world so brightly they have no choice but to see themselves in it, even if just for a second, even if it burns. The following Christmas, something strange happened. I didn't have to plan alone. By mid-November, a handwritten sign-up sheet had appeared on my door. Names of neighbors volunteering for everything from ladder duty to snack prep. Amanda dropped off a map of the cul-de-sac with color-coded zones and suggestions for coordinated decor themes. Mr. Bender offered to host a storage space for cables and tools in his garage. Mrs. Garcia baked early. Fuel for creative minds, she said, and slipped a bag of brittle into my hands without a word. Even the Garcia's daughter got involved. She designed a hand-drawn logo for the event, a smiling house surrounded by tiny musical notes and snowflakes. At the bottom, in shaky blue ink, "Let there be light." It became our name. On the first Saturday of December, the street transformed. Not just my lawn, the whole block. Houses glowed in sync, candy canes wrapped around porch columns, wreaths blinking gently to the same tempo, snowflakes flickering in mirrored patterns from one roofline to the next. What had once been just my passion project had evolved into a coordinated effort of 20 homes. Amanda created a Facebook page. The local newspaper featured us in a holiday spotlight. A local coffee shop donated thermoses of cocoa every Saturday night. A high school band offered to play live one evening. Even timed their medley to our light sequences. One night, as I stood at the end of the block watching it all unfold, a young couple walked past holding hands. The guy looked up at my house, then back at me. "Hey," he said, "you're the guy, right? With the lights?" I nodded. He smiled. "Thanks. We were going to break up last year. The night we saw this place changed everything, made us feel like something still mattered." Then they kept walking. I stood still for a moment. Sometimes revenge fades, but kindness, it lingers. HOA meetings got smaller after Judith's departure, but they also got warmer. Amanda kept minutes brief and decisions transparent. We started rotating committee spots. For the first time, people volunteered, not out of fear, but pride. Mr. Bender even suggested a community garden project. We voted it in unanimously. The crayon note from the kids stayed framed above my workbench. It reminded me that sometimes the simplest things, lights on a house, a cup of cocoa, a kid who smiles again, are what push back the dark. I still kept a folder labeled HOA legal on my computer, just in case. Inside, the letters, the footage, the fines. A complete archive of everything from year one. I hoped I'd never need it, but it stayed there like a quiet warning. Because even in light, shadows try to return. The third year, a TV crew showed up. National, clean suits, powder, tiny microphones. They interviewed Amanda, some neighbors, even me. A 2-minute segment aired during the holidays. One Georgia street that refused to go dark. It went viral. Not TikTok viral, news viral. Hundreds of thousands of views. Emails from all over. A teacher from Montana who played the video for her class. A widow in Maine who wrote me a letter saying the lights helped her feel less alone. A father in Arizona who asked for help replicating the sequence for his autistic son who had cried when the music stopped. I sent him the files. Then one afternoon in June, an envelope arrived. Thick cardstock, embossed return address, real estate group, new development across town, inside an invitation. Dear Mr. Kelly, we are currently building a new community centered around innovation, inclusivity, and collaborative living. We've heard of your contributions to Willow Pines. We would be honored to consult with you on design concepts, particularly your lighting expertise, as we prepare our public spaces for their inaugural season. I laughed, out loud, from HOA fines to design consultant. America. I never saw Judith again, but someone emailed me a link that winter. A rental listing across town. No photo, just a line. HOA compliant, quiet block, no exterior lighting allowed. I closed the tab and got back to work. Because by then, the light show had become more than neighborhood rebellion, more than LEDs or sync software or performance. It was a signal, a message sent once a year to everyone who'd ever been told to sit down, dim down, be less. I used to think it was about fighting back. Now I know. It's about standing up. Every year now, we end the show the same way. One song, one sequence, one message. The lights slowly dim, one by one, house by house, until only mine remains. A single line of words across the garage door, glowing soft and steady. Let there be light. Because the best stories don't end with silence. They end with a glow. And if you're reading this, or watching, and your own Judith is telling you to quiet down, back off, give in, remember, a single bulb in the dark is enough to start a revolution, especially if it syncs to music. Thanks for watching. If this lit up something in you, hit like, share your own HOA horror story in the comments, and subscribe. We've got more coming. And don't worry, the lights always come back on, every December, right on cue.